Welcome one and all to the very first episode of The Rewind Reviews, brought to you by Balls.ie's new pop culture section, The Rewind. My name is Mark Farley and I am joined by Maurice Brosnan and Robbie Smith. And where else could we begin our series but with the movie everyone and their dog is talking about? It's Avengers Endgame.
I saw all these people die. I keep telling everybody they should move on. Some do, but not us.
Even if there's a small chance, we owe this to everyone who's not in this room to try.
We will. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Coming up later in the show, each of us will be picking our standout moments from the movie, reacting to our possibly disastrous pre-movie predictions, and discussing some of the plot questions we still might have. All of that will be spoiler-packed, but first off, lads, can we get your one-word, spoiler-free reaction to the film? Robbie?
Avenged.
Avenged. Morris?
Epic.
Epic.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Oh, you were impressed. You just saw it, myself and Robbie, basically, we saw it at a press screening before it came out, but poor old commoner Morris had to wait until the release night. You were there
24 hours later.
You were there at 11:30 on Wednesday night.
I was, yeah. So it was like it was always going to drum up kind of remarkable excitement, and that was the end result. Like the cinema I went to was absolutely wedged out the gap, and they had to delay the initial actual screening to try and get everybody in initially. Crowd management was not in practice, but it probably should have been. Like as a whole, I mean, if you went into this movie with set expectations, both as a kind of a casual fan or even as a diehard, both of them are satisfied as well as they could be with the movie that is 3 hours and yet doesn't feel like it wastes any moment. So like any kind of really, your basic expectations for me anyway were met by going into the movie, and I think that is probably the most important thing without getting into any kind of spoilers that is boxed off.
And Robbie, where would you rank it among the Marvel movies that we've had over the last years?
I think it's definitely top tier. Like I would hold Winter Soldier definitely up there for me in the past. The first Guardians of the Galaxy, but I think this and Infinity War as well is top tier now. And I think a lot of people will go back and just watch the whole, like the first two parts if you see these last two like all together, and like that's some journey, that's some movie in itself.
It's a hell of a long day trying to watch all that.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder, is there anyone out there that this is the first Avengers movie that they're going to see? Because like you were saying there, like it's the expectations you would have had going into it.
Sure.
Like, I don't know, does it work as well as if you just went in? That's like as a standalone movie. I think it kind of does, but the fact it's paying off like whatever, like what is 20 something movies all in one thing, it's like it's amazing that they do it successfully. Like I almost seen it as like a greatest hits in the way, like there's so many there's little kind of touchstones, there's so many little nods and stuff like that I think if you're someone that's maybe even seen one or two Avengers stuff, you'd be like, oh, this is cool, and this succinctly closes it all up or doesn't in a way. You'll be satisfied with it. But if you're someone who's a diehard, who's watched all of them, you'll get so much out of this movie that it works on so many levels that I don't understand how they came to do it. Like if you're starting to write this movie, like that, the fact they could like get all those loose ends and just tie it all together, and it was. Yeah,
it's one of those, because we were chatting about this in the office, but can you go to it if you haven't watched any of the other Avengers movies? And you definitely can, and probably catch up pretty quickly if you just need to know the premise that half of society has been wiped out with this guy, and you can catch up pretty quickly. But I don't think you're going to get the same value out of it in the callbacks and things like that have come from the previous films. Morris, very quickly, if you are someone if there's someone now listening on the fence, they're not sure if they should go and see it or not, what would you say to them?
Yeah, like here's the thing, right? Like superhero movies are always going to be kind of much maligned by a certain tier and a certain bracket, and that's always going to happen. But if your set goal for a superhero movie, like mine was going into this movie, like just to provide some context here, right? I watched United versus City in the Premier League on Wednesday night, and then went to see this movie. And for 5 hours, it was total bliss away from kind of all the bollocks around Brexit and the rapid dissension of the world and climate change and everything that's going on right now. And that's what these movies are always going to be like. They're an outlet. It's a distraction. You're not going to learn a huge amount more about the world or your place in it. But if you want the distraction, whether or not you've seen any of them or whether you've seen all of them, you're still going to get that 3 hours of just parody from kind of everything else, and it serves that purpose perfectly. So if that's what you're after, like if you're after an outlet, a distraction, whatever you want to call it, this movie will give you that, regardless of your fanfare to it. All these, both of you just touched off the references that are within it. None of them are, maybe if you look at other franchises like Star Wars, for example, references to past movies are kind of exclusionary in terms of if you aren't within that, you do feel like you're missing out on the joke, like you feel on the outside of it. And they're so subtle within this movie, which is part of why it's so good, that you wouldn't necessarily even pick up on them if you weren't aware of them. So therefore you don't feel like you're missing out on anything, or you don't feel like you're being shortchanged. So that's why this movie kind of has its place. So if that's what you're after, you're going to get it. Nicely
summarised. We spent a good few minutes here walking on eggshells trying not to spoil it on anyone. And of course Morris has spoiled the fact that neither the Manchester Derby nor Brexit feature in this film. But
I think also, like, in a way that like it's almost like I could say that about other movies in this, that like I think I'm almost in that camp as well. I'm a little bit of a snob in film wise, and there's been other films in the past, like even the first Avengers in a way, that ticks the boxes of a superhero movie. And even for a lot of them, I would suggest to someone, if you haven't watched them, you can go in and enjoy this. But I think this is almost a level up from that. So it ticks the boxes in a sense for superhero movies, but it's like so like the storyline, the plot to it is elevated to something that you haven't seen before in other movies. You haven't seen in any Marvel, DC stuff like that. That it has kind of raised the game. That if you go in and this is the first one you've watched, or you haven't seen a few, you're going to be absolutely blown away. Even on that level, like
exactly. So if you haven't seen it yet, stop, listen to this right now. Go watch it and then come back, because we are warning you right now, the rest of this podcast is going to be spoiler laden. We are going to pick our standout moments. We're going to look back at some of the predictions. We made predictions before we went in to watch it. We're going to swap them around and get each other to read them out, see how far off the mark we were, or how close we actually were. And then we're going to talk about whatever questions we might have arising from the plot. Right, lads. So we picked 2 standout moments each. And let's just get it out of the way. Who has Iron Man dying as their standout moment?
I don't know.
Not me.
What? Lads, the biggest plot twist in the history of cinema, the biggest film ever. And neither of us have it as a great moment.
Is that a plot twist?
I guess, I mean, in a movie so dominated by time travel, is he really gone? Is kind of your
he's gone. He's definitely
Is
gone.
He definitely gone?
Yeah, he's gone.
I hope so.
Yeah,
because
I think it's mostly because I don't think Robert Downey Jr. is coming back. Never mind. So perhaps you're going to have Iron Woman. I definitely think the window the door was left open for that, the door and the window.
Or even there's obviously as well the kid from Iron Man in Tennessee who saves him there, who turns up at his funeral.
He's at the end.
So so like, which I thought was more of a nod to a succession to Iron Man. And again, that's something that like that's actually a perfect example of this thing we're talking about. It doesn't exclude anybody. Like if that's a crowd and if that's a face in a crowd, if you don't recognize him essentially, but even if you do. It tints at something that could be further come down the line. Yeah. So just on that theme, right, I guess just to go into these moments, that for me those are kind of the nods that. So one of my stand-up moments was the gauntlet scene during the big battle towards the end, because it goes from Hawkeye to Black Panther to Spider-Man to Captain Marvel. The gauntlet is literally passed along, and for me anyway, that hinted at what is to come. Like these are all the new wave of MCU characters. So you're talking about guys like Black Panther, to see him feature prominently in that scene. There's obviously going to be something to come with that. Captain Marvel, naturally, we already know there's another Spider-Man. That kind of felt like a real symbolic moment, which was integrated perfectly into that scene. And so I thought that was kind of brilliant, and all those nods to what is to come, I think is what's best. Like I love the way they signed off on Loki in this movie. I think that was really, really good, because it gives scope for something to happen there, whether that be a prequel or a sequel. Obviously it's going to be a prequel, given what happened in Infinity Wars. But those kind of nods, I think it opens up maybe a conversation we'll have later. It opens up worlds beyond this, that even though this is really significant in signing off on like a phenomenal feat, there still is in some ways more to come.
And that actually brings on, just to jump in with my first moment here, because it's almost the opposite but the same idea in terms of, I really loved Captain America in the elevator. But, just because it was, I actually already watched The Winter Soldier about 2 weeks ago, and it's just it's one of those moments, like you're saying, like that, if you haven't seen any of the Avenger films or any of the Marvel films before this, it's not like you're missing out on anything major. He's in the elevator and he just says "Hail Hydra" and gets to walk away. But like, that's such a good callback to the original.
You expect it to be that badass elevator scene where he just beats the
it was like, before we get into this, does anybody want to get off? But like, that was one of the, that's like, there are so many moments like this of callbacks to previous films, and also even when he's fighting himself. But I thought that was the one that was just like really well done, really subtle, funny, and it didn't really, it wasn't like it was overkill or anything. It wasn't like, Jesus, how are they going to solve this problem? They make a lot of jokes about time travel movies, and that was something they could have gotten into, but they didn't really. Robbie, what was your first moment?
Well, one of the, like you just touched upon, I think the Cap versus Cap fight, I thought was amazing. And just the fight in itself, like smashing down the levels of glass, the choke where he says Bucky's alive as well to get out of it, and then even it tied together a few little bits, and then he looks at his own ass and is like, that is the ass of America. Like, I thought that was so nice. There was one point that like stood out to me in that how annoying it kind of was, and I think it will annoy me as the years go by, and that was the fact that they were playing Fortnite in the thing. I thought it was just like, it's such a like nod to just the current pop culture stuff that I know that's not going to stand the test of time. And like when your kids are watching this or whatever and look back and like, what's is that supposed to, are we supposed to know what that is? It's like, no, you're not. Like it's something that it ages the movie just like immediately, and I was like, oh god, that's
there's some sort of relationship between Epic Games, I presume, and Marvel, because they are Disney, because they had the Infinity Gauntlet back when Infinity War came out. You could play as Thanos.
And
I think
they'll have a thing now as well.
They're bringing it back in the Thor's hammer or something. Morris, your second big moment.
My second one is on, like, I liked the theme of kind of nodbacks, so I was thinking of like Iron Man's kind of nodbacks, and even when he's recording the message into his helmet and he says, "Don't put this on social media," and you think back to the moment in the very first Iron Man when he lets your man take the picture with him, was like, "Don't put this on your MySpace," like, as long as like he just doesn't want the. I thought that was a nice nod, but mine is actually, I think, like, the Russos, whatever about kind of Stan Lee's features, which we're led to believe this is the last one. I think the Russos have been really kind of subtle in the way they've integrated themselves into this movie, both kind of as directors and also as characters. So I know they cut the scene from Infinity Wars, but I thought the nod in this movie was kind of nice. It was the moment when he's speaking to Captain America. They're sitting in a circle and he talks about trying to move on and going on a first date, and it's also like trivial point. It's the first openly gay character to feature in a Marvel movie, when that man is sitting in the comfort circle and he's talking about going on a date with his partner, and kind of when did you start crying? I started crying after the salad arrived, and the cabbage, was like, I wait until dessert, and it's kind of the movements of that. But Russo in itself, like, he was also in he was in Civil War. He was a psychologist who tried to interrogate Bucky in that film. Again, it was just kind of a really subtle nod to him. It's one of those things, if you weren't aware of it, it doesn't matter. Like, it functions as a perfectly fine part of the movie. If you are aware of it, it's a nice nod to the fact that somebody has grown with this franchise, is so integral to it. There was also the fact that he's still managed to integrate characters from Community, which he obviously did. Like, they've worked on stuff beyond Avengers. He was in they did Yumi and Dupree. They directed that film, the Russo brothers. They've also worked on other series as well.
On Community,
but especially Community. And
so good.
Like the scene when Ant-Man finally gets out and you see the security guard, who, for anyone who's seen a Community, it's obviously Chong from Community, and she's right there. And even if you aren't aware of that, it's still kind of a funny character that is really well summarised for the moment that it is. Like, that's the nice thing. None of those, to me anyway, cameos kind of felt arrogant, though. There was no sense of kind of ego or any kind of even an intrusion, to be honest. They kind of flowed perfectly, which is what the movie should do, and yet there were still kind of nice nods to something beyond that, or something that you might just pick up on. Like, not that it has any grander point, you just think, even if you do notice it, you're just like, wow, that's clever. And sometimes that's all that matters.
Robbie, your second moment?
Well, I was just going to comment on that. I think like one of the Russos has come out and said like, oh, it's cool that we've had like the openly gay character in Marvel movies, but like I felt like it was a little bit like like clapping himself on the back, like
when he said that,
as in like we've had 20 something movies. How about we have like an openly gay character that's a whole superhero in a movie? Like, if I thought it was just a little bit like, I'm going to insert myself in this and then congratulate myself on being so forward with
the fact that he acknowledged it post-film. Is that you mean? Yes, and I think that's a really good point. I think a lot of these moments should be allowed for them to speak for themselves. I really hope that some things aren't clarified post-production. That probably didn't need to be honest, but those kind of moments, I think, I hope they don't try and overblow the significance of the battle scene moment when all the women united together for that brief cameo. Like, I hope those things, that felt a bit more forced, to be honest, than the initial moment did. But even still, I hope that they don't overblow the significance of it. I just hope they let that stand for itself and stop trying to, like, this is one of the problems with superhero movies. Like, you don't necessarily have to attach great meaning to it. Just let it speak for itself and don't overblow that afterwards.
That's what I thought. But the gay character actually was nice the way they just subtly, it wasn't like a big announcement around it.
Exactly,
the way they said he. I do think the women's one, I've kind of wrestled with it a bit. Initially I thought this is a bit of overkill in terms of having it almost felt like you were just doing it for the sake of it. Whereas then I thought, you know what, actually, it's not a bad, like, you don't actually realise how far they've come in terms of the female inclusion in the Avengers and their support characters or whatever until you actually see them all in a line together. You're like, Jesus, this actually has come an awful long way. So maybe it was worth it just for that you actually just, you sometimes do need it just plastered on the wall for you
just
to see.
Just to nod to it, yeah.
It can be as blatant as it wants, like, of it. Because it's kind of like, it's almost like a product placement in itself, which we talked about after we came out. We were like, oh, it's a little bit like there's one or two scenes that are a bit weird, but and kind of like so blatantly, okay, this is a new car that we're going to have coming out. This Audi pulls in and we have all these glamour shots of like different things. But another moment I thought was cool, like I've kind of picked on just small little things, but that scene where Ant-Man has the taco and he's outside and goes down and blows it away.
And Bruce comes out there.
Yeah, it was so good. And then I forget who says it. It's like, oh, we've got an idiot on the porch or something like that.
It was Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
I had one other moment. Just I thought was brilliant was when Spider-Man reunited with Iron Man when he's like going, he's like, Mr. Stark, I was on a thing, and then they all disappeared. And which again, like, and it's something we'll get to later on in terms of how these characters have grown almost into the actors that have played them, and you can see so much of Tom Holland in Peter Parker, and he was he's the best kind of, like, there's an innocence around him that I think you also kind of see in the cinema if you're watching it, as you were saying, that there was a child beside you and they were almost in the screen at one stage. They were so engrossed, and we're here as men nearly 30 going, we're analysing it in terms of how the director did this and that and the other, where you're like, Spider-Man really encapsulates what this is all really about, actually, and he's just such a fun character for people of all ages. And
that's what, like, at the time, I think people kind of complained that he was so young, you know what I mean? But like Spider-Man, obviously there's different incarnations, but he's supposed to be in high school. It makes more sense, because Tobey Maguire always looked like a good bit older than he should have been. And then Aunt May, who we're used to being like a grey-haired woman, is actually his aunt, and that's what she's supposed to be, an auntie, like Aunt May. Like Marissa Tomei is like the perfect age, like, for that, and it's like, I thought that was like there's something as well about Tom Holland's like kind of voice where he talks like this that just gets to me. It just tugs at my heartodstrings, and like it's so emotional. And he did it twice in the movie.
Was welling up.
Absolutely.
But both times when there was another thing that when Tony just sees him and is so relieved to see that he's alive, because obviously his whole thing is that he's wrestling with the kid and I lost the kid and all that when he's at the start of the film. And then when he's like introduced himself to Captain Marvel, I'm Peter Parker, which was, remember was it Civil War where he introduced himself to Doctor Strange. He goes, I think we're using our made up names. Spider-Man.
I also wanted to pick like an MVP of the movie as well, and that's like, it's like the mouse or the rat that's like in the van at the start. Because if he doesn't like touch on those little buttons, Ant-Man doesn't come back. The whole thing with the quantum, like physics, the quantum realm, all that, none of that happens. The movie doesn't happen. There's no time travel. That little bit where it just slowly zooms in, you can see it happening. It was a nice little touch. And
on that note, I think it's time we move on to our predictions, and we'll see if anybody had predicted that a rat would bring Ant-Man back into the present. have Robbie's predictions here, and Robbie, you predicted first of all that Hawkeye was going to sacrifice himself to save Black Widow.
Yeah, and I was almost 100% on the nail, like, and I think it is kind of true in a way that like he does, and like he fully believes that he's going to die and like basically sacrifice himself to get the Soul Stone, isn't it?
Yeah,
at the time, and yeah, because there was a point where it's like, yes, I got my prediction right. Oh no, yes, I got it. Oh no. So there's like that double fake out where they keep, and then you think it is, and then she gets him, and like, yeah, it's a cool moment as well. That kind of links back to something that I think we'll talk about later with the kind of the Soul Stone and Gamora, and then that part where he just wakes up afterwards, where he's in the water and stuff like that. That kind of leads to it. But
I also thought they did it really well, because it's as fans of wrestling, we can very easily see through a kayfabe fight and who's going to win it. And there were moments now where I genuinely thought, all right, well, I thought it makes no sense for it to be Hawkeye, given that the whole thing is about him getting back to his wife and kids and getting them back. But there were times during the fight, or for want of a better word, where I was like, Jesus, it's actually going to be Hawkeye. So that was...
Because I kind of forgot he had kids, and I was like, oh, it's totally going to make sense, because they have that will they, won't they almost kind of thing. There's like a mutual understanding, and they talk about Moscow or Budapest. Like, oh, we won't talk about it. And that's what I was thinking. I was like that. And then the movie opens with him playing with his kids, and then they snap to dust or whatever, and I was like, oh no, that completely balls this up. Like, there's no, he actually has something to fight for. But then in my head I was like, oh no, he can just be like, oh, this is for my family, you know, tell them I love them and stuff like that, which he does say. And then of course she stops him, like,
speaking of which, this is interesting. Mark reckoned that Black Widow and Captain America will shift, which which I guess wasn't the wildest prediction in the world.
It probably was in terms of, if you think of Hawkeye and Bruce Banner, because Bruce Banner, there was an awful lot of will they won't they with Bruce Banner over the last couple of years, and like, I even saw people say, like, you know, obviously the actors can't answer anything about the plot, but about the time Scarlett Johansson was asked in the build-up going, will Black Widow and Hulk eventually get together? But if you watch back through, especially The Winter Soldier, where it was the first film where Captain America and Black Widow were together, there were not scenes. Remember, Black Widow was always taking the piss out of him about when is he going to go on a date and get a girlfriend and all that, and it looked as if it was like, oh, it's going to be the two of them. And then I had predicted this, and I thought, this is really out there, because I think they might be going to throw a curveball and everybody thinks it's going to be Hulk, and then maybe a mental. But for the first 20 minutes of the film, it was just Evans and Johansson together
eating peanut butter sandwiches.
Yeah, exactly. Talking about going on, have to go on a date and all that, and try to move on with their lives. So I still don't think it was the maddest prediction.
Because I think it was the two of them, and then like Captain Marvel and Thor. I think kind of it was hinted in the trailers that came out beforehand, like, oh, something might happen there. And she got her hair cut for some reason as well, which is Captain Marvel came back and had which is what it looks like at the moment.
Yeah, so that was, which is brilliant, right? That's a nod to the comic books, which is so that's the exact style she marked in the comic books. And there's a load of nods to the comic books that like the great thing about these nods is that I'm sure that all three of us have missed out on loads, and it doesn't matter. Like, we don't feel like we've missed out on the film. But just one other one that was really cool was the just a really quick tangent. When Captain America goes back to the base in the 1970s, he's wearing a suit. He's wearing an Iron Man suit, and on the suit says Roscoe. And Roscoe is obviously the guy from the comic books, Roscoe Simmons, who replaced Captain America for a couple of episodes. So, if anyone who read the comic books, for a brief part, Steve is no longer Captain America. It's Roscoe Simmons who takes that role, and he goes back to the 70s and wears Roscoe's. So it's just a really, like, if you saw that name tag, you wouldn't have balked at it if you didn't notice from the comic book. But again, it's just a really subtle nod that doesn't really mean anything. Like, I don't think that Simmons is going to have any meaning moving forward. It's just a nice nod to a comic book which spawned the idea for Captain America.
One of these was one of those little nods that I want. It's not to a comic book, but it's to a different movie. I just thought we should mention it before I go off. It is when Nick Fury dies in Winter Soldier and have his headstone. There's I can't remember the quote exactly, but it's on the headstone, and it's from Ezekiel, whatever chapter it is in the Bible, and it's the exact passage from the Bible that he reads out and that he recites in Pulp Fiction.
No way! I didn't even know that. Wow.
It's all Pulp Fiction, the Tarantino universe, and Marvel are all the same.
Yeah. But Robbie, you have Morris's predictions.
Morris's are the full-on, like, deep cuts here. One of them's one of them is that the Watchers themselves would play a crucial part in it. Who are I think are they the ones that they're in the cameo with Stan Lee?
Yeah.
basically.
So the
theory is that he's one of them as well.
So we knew coming into the movie that Stan Lee this was his final cameo because he wasn't able to film anymore before his death. So based off that theme, for what this prediction is wildly wrong, by the way, just for it's worth clarifying. But just what I was thinking was that, and this is just me reading way too much into it, but if you look back at his previous cameos, I thought there was some significance to those moments. So say for example in Captain Marvel, he turns up when she's just arrived on Earth, which is such a huge, crucial moment, and she's changing the scorch through the train, and he spots her there, and it felt like there might have been something pivotal there, and it's just before she linked up with Fury. I thought maybe there was something within that. Before that, in his cameo in Infinity Wars, is in the bus when the Earth has just been attacked, and Spider-Man leaves, and Spider-Man, who obviously would go on to disappear in the snapping. I just thought there was some sort of significance in that the Watchers would have been briefed on. All this doesn't matter because none of it came true.
But they're basically like they're like sentient beings that like would send people out. So they would have, I think,
to observe.
Yeah. So Stanley would have went and lived different lives as different people, observed all the Avengers, went back up to space to the Watchers, and
reported it all back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the Watchers are from space.
Kind of, yeah,
like galactic, yeah.
Like, yeah. Well, I think it was confirmed that he was playing that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a nod to it when he's in the first or the second Guardians of the Galaxy, when he's reporting to them. It's just a really brief cameo when he's sitting on a bench telling them, and all he does is just tell them like what he's seen. There's no all the significance attached to that was solely my own.
Your second prediction then for Morris was that the Falcon disappears.
Yeah, I mean, not like that was a bit of a piss take prediction. Like, not even that he's killed off, just that they don't bother to further develop the character because he has no impact anyway. I know, because it became crucial. Speaking of so that obviously was me totally underestimating the significance of a character.
But yeah, one thing on Falcon is I can see where you come from. Just before we move off that, in that I did a thing. I ranked the Avengers based on who'd be the most cracking coppers, and I had put like I couldn't rank them all. Obviously, there's so many of them. So I had gone like whatever it was. I think it was top 12 or 13, and then just went the filler as the next one, which were like Falcon, War Machine. Who else was there? Like Vision, the most filler of all of them. Like, I think no matter how they tried to ram them down our throats, didn't really try, I suppose, but I don't know if any of us can give a damn about them. So we'll be interested to see now if Falcon becomes the new Captain America.
Well, especially when they've such insignificance in war, you know, like whatever about as characters, like to watch bullets bounce off Thanos, like you're never going to win. So the idea that they're just kind of have no major impact, that was just a play on somebody that we thought wouldn't be in. It turns out that was totally wrong. Mark, your second prediction was that Ant-Man will save everyone, which again, like there's a degree of probably truth to that, the way things eventually end up developing.
Yeah, because I had meant it as a sort of light-hearted joke, in just that I really like Paul Rudd and really like Ant-Man. And they're kind of one of the same. And I was like, Ant-Man's the man, he'll save the day. Now, obviously there's the jokey thing of that theory about why doesn't Ant-Man just fly up Thanos' arse and get really big
and expand,
which no one's ever really answered as to why he shouldn't, but or why he couldn't do it. But like, there's something, Paul Rudd deserves major kudos because he's now done this twice. He's probably taken on the greatest TV franchise of all time and possibly the greatest movie franchise of all time, and wormed his way into the main characters of both. So if you think of Friends and the countless support cast that came into that, all the different boyfriends Phoebe had, Hank Azaria, Janice with Chandler. Now, I know she came back in and out a good lot, but the only person that ever came in and stayed forever and made himself actually one of the big group of friends was Paul Rudd. And then he's done the same. Now, I know we can say these are characters he's playing or whatever, but I think it's his quality as a comedy actor. He's come in, and Ant-Man should only be the same as Falcon or War Machine or all these. He's I think he was at the time when we'd all gotten sick of superhero films, and when it came out, it was like, I'm not watching Ant-Man. And I didn't up until I accidentally saw it at Christmas when it was just on the TV, and I just kept watching it, got sucked into it. And you can see so much of that character. You know, he brings so much to the comic relief. Talking about Spider-Man, he's the exact same effect as Tom Holland. And I was jokingly saying that he saves everyone, but I think he did. I think he saved humanity, and he also saved the film as making it into one of the possibly the movie of the year.
He saved you from lapsing on watching any Marvel movies.
Yeah.
You accidentally watched it.
Exactly. He saved my enthusiasm for Marvel
Yeah.
films. Anyone with any other thoughts?
Well,
on
I think the like you were talking about the Falcon and Winter Soldier, like there's a lovely little scene where he passes the shield kind of to the both of them in a way, and then there was like the recent like Disney Plus announcement, so they're going to have
The spin-off,
Winter Soldier and Falcon,
Yeah.
which I think it'll be cool if they go with like, okay, it's the next stage of like we're going to be Captain America, or they're either fighting for the shield, or they're passing it on like to each other, or something kind of develops from that. I think it's kind of cool.
It was also, there was a really nice nod just on that team, by the way, going back to the callbacks and references, but there's a really nice nod to the first Captain America when Steve tears past Wilson in the training camp, says, on your left, and then you come back to the film at the weekend and it's the exact same thing in the battle scene. I thought that was just again, like that, just to stress this point, that doesn't feel forced. Like there's no element of that where you're like, what's that about, if you don't understand it.
Yeah.
But when you do, again, it's just a good throwback to something kind of greater.
Definitely. You're speaking of Falcon and possible follow-ups to this movie. Your second prediction, Robbie, was that this end would set up the next stage of Young Avengers. So first of all, explain Young Avengers to us.
Well, Young Avengers is kind of like the next stage. It's kind of like the younger people. Like at the end of it does set up some of them. Like obviously, there's Ant-Man's daughter is older now and could take the mantle for that. Some people were saying like Shuri as well, who has the technology, the Wakanda. Is it Black Panther's like younger sister maybe?
Yeah.
She would be the next Iron Man. I think someone mentions at one point that she's the most intelligent person in the universe or something like that. That would be close to Tony Stark, kind of taking up that mantle. Obviously there's Tony Stark's daughter, and there's also the kid that we mentioned is in the funeral, who like he leaves his old suit, I think. Or at least some
he
of the
extends
kind of
technology
equipment
to him anyway, yeah.
Like that's kind of one of the smaller kind of gripes I had with the movie. Like going into it, I kind of expected it to end and kind of have more closure, as in like, okay, the next stage is going to be this and this. Like I totally seen it as being, okay, Thor is gone, Iron Man is gone, Captain America is gone. I seen like that first kind of wave of the first Avengers basically like not continuing on afterwards. But of course we see Thor is probably going to be the next Guardians, and they kind of set it up with people that we've seen before. I kind of expected the last scene to be kind of like we touched upon, like you saying, passing the gauntlet in a way. Like I thought I would see maybe Black Panther, Captain Marvel, and like basically that new set, like the new Avengers or the Young Avengers.
Yeah.
Kind of being set up, which like it kind of hints to, but I kind of seen a lot more closure happening in how it would end.
Yeah, I suppose if you look at the original Avengers, Iron Man is gone, definitely. Captain America's gone. Black Widow is gone, which was interesting. I thought she might have got her own film at some stage. Maybe they will. Maybe she'll come back in some sort of prequel. But then also, Thor is probably only going to exist, I think, in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Now he's probably. I don't think there's going to be another Thor film.
I can't believe we were half an hour in and we still haven't mentioned Big Belly Thor, which is the best.
Oh my God,
the best version of Thor. The Thor is the Big Lebowski. It's definitely the best version we've seen yet.
I love that they committed to it as well. Like I totally expected like the lightning to blow all of his fat off, but they just stuck with it for the whole thing, and he had the chubby suit as well.
Isn't there, like, there is really, like, as far as you can read into this stuff, and again, as I said at the start, it is kind of a distraction, but the fact that there is kind of a theme throughout the Thor's character progression of that sense of insecurity and what it meant with his mother, and that was really well developed. And even this like stuff, there was a load of those themes, like Captain America's kind of difficulty in grasping that he isn't in his own time now, like all that stuff was further trashed out. You got what would you call it, maybe Act 2 of this film, like the middle tier was given all these kind of, we've given space and time to develop that stuff in a way that like still developed the plot of this as a sole movie, but also kind of wrapped up 21 movies that came previously.
Yeah, and also I think Thor is another perfect example of how over time it has just become more and more Hemsworth.
Yeah,
You can see he really embodied that character. I did also think, just briefly on that it was maybe not strange, but probably notable that I don't think the Guardians of the Galaxy really had that much of an effect or that much of a role to play in the fight. Like the only time you see Pratt is when Star-Lord when Nebula when Gamora comes to save him, and they're like, "Oh, is this the guy?" And she's like, "Oh, you know, it was either him or was it him or
a tree, basically. Wasn't
him or
it?
a tree.
Yeah. That's like the good question of like where she is now. Like obviously we see him searching for her at the end, like the old version, the 2014 version.
This is bringing us on nicely to our final segment where we talk about the questions we have arising from the film. That was my number one question.
Yeah.
Was I don't understand how I feel like Guardians of the Galaxy 3 now has been set up.
Yeah, definitely.
To be the search for Gamora. But both ways, Gamora should be gone. Either she's exterminated when Iron Man clicks his fingers, or she's come from the past, and where she can't, because when they return the Infinity Stones, then she wouldn't have been there in the future ever.
Yeah.
So like, where does she? They're in the present day where Gamora is dead, and past Gamora is back in the past. So unless they go back in time and bring her to the future, I don't know how this...
Yeah, there's one point, there's like an awkward moment that I think must have had to have happened for Captain America to come back. They specifically say, okay, you have to place the stones exactly to where they were when you got them. So is Captain America going back to where like Red Skull is on that mountain in like Madeira or whatever it's called, and goes down to Gamora's dead body and puts the stone back where it is? You know what I mean? Like this, it's such a weird thing, but yeah, it's kind of confusing the way that is like she sees herself. Like there should be possibly two of them. Like she's still alive when they go back. She's seen herself be killed, and she's seen the future as well. That she's supposed to fall in love with Quill, and her sister, her actual sister, dies, and her other sister from the future.
Yeah, see, the thing is when they
back.
The thing is that though that's explained away, but when they bring the stones back, this all will have never happened. So she doesn't see that, but. How is she, like? Why is he searching for her then? Why is Quill searching for her? Because I know he's probably just out of hope, but like, if this turns out that she's alive, I don't understand how she can be.
So yeah, and I think on that team, right, where the most scope for this franchise to move forward was given in this movie is in the 5-year gap, which is literally summarized in one flash of a scene and a caption. And within that, I think that's where the most scope is to develop this, because that's time that's totally unaccounted for. And as we've seen now, the only kind of the asterisks that will be over anything that happens within that period, or if it's going to be a Loki prequel or something within that 5-year stint, is that the asterisk is that we know it's not going to have any real consequence moving forward because of what's happened afterwards. But that's true of any prequel anyway. So you can still develop a full film within that. Like on that team, by the way, right? My kind of question coming out of this movie was, if the stones still exist and the gauntlet is still there, can that be used to revive Thanos, and could we be stuck in a loop here? Like, is that really boxed off, or where do we go with that narrative? They are in danger of oversaturizing this kind of franchise as it currently exists, as it currently forms, and like the fact that there's still sort of wiggle room there for is definitely a question mark. Yeah,
that's what I mean. Yeah, kind of like I was saying earlier, that like I kind of seen a more definitive like ending to it, but it's that cash cow where they're like, oh no, we'll milk out a few more, like another Guardians movie and stuff like that. Another question, like you were saying with the 5-year thing as well, why is Spider-Man still in high school? Like after
that was the other one. He should be still in high school, because he's
high school's 4 years, isn't it?
Yeah, but say he's missed whatever, so he's back in, I don't know what year he was in, senior year or whatever, right? The man should finish school.
Yeah, but his friend is still there.
But maybe his friend was wiped out. But I was just thinking, like, it just had so many questions on this, in terms of that we got to see the Tony Stark perspective of it, which is very neat and tidy. And it's like, well, if we go back 5 years in time, I don't have a child.
Yeah.
Like this, there's so many things like that. People will actually, more people will die because you come back in time. But then there's things like this, where like, did half of the people in Peter Parker's year just go on and finish high school, and now he's back in high school with a load of people who are 5 years younger than him, and then also like things like, what happens if your wife was wiped out and you've gone on in life and you've got yourself a new girlfriend, you're trying to rebuild your life, and then all of a sudden your wife comes back? Like, what's going on here? Or like, if like some, I don't know, you probably wouldn't have this, but like say this year, like if you got a brother and sister and you're 3 years older than your sister, and you get wiped out, and you come back and now your sister's suddenly 2 years older than you. Like, there's a lot of repercussions here for humanity.
This is something that the Avengers initiative has definitely overlooked.
Have you any questions, Morris?
Yeah, well, obviously what happened in those 5 questions, then the gauntlet one, and also just Loki. Like there's still so much scope to see what happens with Loki, especially given how he bowed out in this film. I think he's also got enough fanfare for that to exist as its own spin-off as well, and for them to trash that out further.
It's mad how he's become such a major character in it. I wonder, did they plan this out? I don't know.
It's the Hiddleston,
not knowing knowing the comic books all that well. That like I would have presumed Loki was in the first Thor, and that'd be the end of him. But he's showing up in nearly pretty much every movie at this stage.
Yeah, I think it's the Hiddleston effect in a way. Like he's got so many fans and. He was so good in it as well. He totally owned that. Like he was another level to the typical like shtick of like, oh, it's a bad guy who we kill in the end. And
but they also have to have known this. Like this is the thing when you look at the film is everything seems as if it was planned out from the beginning.
Yeah.
So like
I think we're maybe giving them more credit than they. Do you think? I think so. I think like the genius in what they've done with the movie is make it seem as if okay, this has been a whatever 20 year or 15-year plan or whatever it was like that. Just I think it's so expertly kind of like touched upon in those little moments. Like that's
Have you any other pressing questions?
Just the Loki one as well. I thought was cool that they obviously that he has the series as well coming up on the Disney Plus thing.
Yeah.
But that lovely little like. Because there was theories before that like he was still alive. Like I seen something about like the fact he did something with his left hand. Did you see that? Like that it wasn't him.
The conspiracy
theory.
Yeah,
before he was like stuff like that. I thought was kind of cool. It's like because he zapped obviously like went off in the portal when he got the Tesseract and stuff like that, and it just leaves it open to. Yeah, for his own little spin-off show.
My last one was, and it's again similar to like I've very gone back to the future here with all these questions, and as Paul Rudd or as Ant-Man discovered during the film that Back to the Future was a load of crap or bullshit, I think was the phrase. If Captain America went back to leave back the stones, because as we know, you need to return everything as it was, because you don't want to mess up the universe. You want to, as Doc Brown would say, you don't want to throw the universe off balance.
Yeah.
And yet he then stays in the past. So everything he does has a snowball effect. So he goes and he meets up with anyone. He I don't know, accidentally kills a dog with his car, whatever it is. He's there. Surely this is some sort of ripple effect on the entire universe. I just don't understand. It's very I think it's very irresponsible
for the first Avenger to do something like that. Also, there have to be another awkward moment where he has to explain to Peggy that he kissed her like great granddaughter in is it a Winter Soldier or one of them? He's basically her lineage. He kisses like he does shift. That I'd say was an awkward conversation when he goes back to Peggy and has his little dance.
And then like what does Peggy do when present day version of Captain America goes to visit her in her isn't she in a hospice or in a hospital before she dies? Does she have to be like, oh, I'm so surprised to see you, even though
I just seen you half an hour ago?
Future you, that's my life. I've lived with future you for the last 40 years. So that's a bit strange.
It throws up some kind of kinky bedroom antics possibly for Peggy when she gets to that age.
I'm seeing 2-4 Captain Americas. But that is it, lads. Any more present thoughts or are you off to watch it again? I'm literally off to watch it again this evening. So I'll probably have to record another podcast with all my other questions or try to figure out this whole Captain America thing as I'm watching.
It's definitely a huge rewatchable. There's so much in it that, as we just touched on, like references we probably missed or moments that we probably didn't appreciate. That it's one like, and also the fact that even though it's 3 hours long, it doesn't feel wasted. Like it doesn't feel too long. So
and also I had to go to the Jacks in the middle of it, and like I only missed a minute or two, but it felt like a vital minute or two. There's literally no time to go to so I'm going to make sure I don't leave for that moment now when I watch it the second time. But lads, thanks very much for your company today, and thank you very much for listening. If you have any standout moments, any crazy predictions for the rest of the Marvel cinematic journey, be sure to get in touch. You can get us at therewind.ie, that's DOTIE on Twitter. You can also get us on any of the Balls.ie channels. And obviously, if this is your first time listening to our podcast, make sure to subscribe through the Balls.ie podcast feed. You can get it on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Cast, any of them. And we will chat to you next time.